It's Monday, the 6th of July, in the worst year of our lives. It's, yeah, here we are. It's the cruise. You take Craig, you put that with the news, you get cruise. You keep Jim Grant there, and it stays cruise. But he's right here right now, and he's the guy that holds this whole thing together by telling us what's coming up on this episode of Cruise, episode 15. They didn't think we could do it, Jim Grant. Tell them all about it.
Only the voices in your head. We established that. Didn't think we could do it last. I always think we could get to episode 15. I just thought no one would watch.
Forever the optimist, Jim.
Yeah. All you can do is take control of your own life, do what you want to do, and if people listen, they listen, and if they don't, they don't. But I always thought we could get to episode 15. I just thought it would be, friends and family listening. But It's not.
I looked, was it last night or maybe even today? And it was, we're closing in on 800 when I last looked. And I just it's warming to know. It's warming to know that anybody's watching, Jim, but that, that many people are even watching a minute of it. We appreciate it. And thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for watching. And hopefully episode 15 will be just as well received as episode 14. We had a lot of positive feedback on that. Coming up on today's show, this is being recorded on Monday, the 6th of July. It'll be going out on the Thursdays at 6 p.m. on Facebook, 9 p.m. on YouTube as ever. Coming up today, we have brutally honest pub landlords do a job advert. We're to be talking about the pubs that reopened at the weekend after lockdown. Raw sewage in England's rivers. We're going to be looking at more track and trace privacy concerns. How the NHS, it's okay to clap for them, but give them a pay rise. Hell no, say the Tories. We're going to be looking.
We got the flesh on our palm.
Or concerns about new flu strain coming out of China. The next wave of flu, the next wave of fear is on its way. 13 times the higher death rate in the UK than Germany. We've got in St Albans, there's Jesus has been presented as a black person, from what I can see from the article. We don't always read the article.
St Albans. I don't know what bit about that I'm more surprised of.
Here on Cruise, we just pick out the articles and then we actually have our live reactions on air, which is why it's not rehearsed or scripted. Or often we look at the articles and think, I should have said that at the time. We should cheat. We should do it in advance, but we don't. We always like to give you our real
honest reaction. There's your news. Laughing right at it.
That's it. I just pick out the headlines and we go from that. So, bringing us on to our first article of the day. This is from the Mirror, and this is by Chrissy Dawson and Luke Matthews. Speaking of Jesus there, Luke and Matthew. Right. So the 1st of July, 2020.
Well spotted, Jim Grant. James, may I say James? We won't go any deeper into that, but we'll talk off air.
Yeah, well, I'm up for beating off the money changers from the temple.
Ixnay on the Athlike.
I don't even know what that means.
Some people will.
Is that Latin?
Pig Latin, I guess they call it. Yeah. I don't even know how to describe it, but Ixnay is Nix. So
I know a little bit of Latin.
It's nothing like Latin. It's the use of Latin to make it seem more complicated. It's like a kid's bastardization of English to sneak messages in front of each other.
I haven't done it for 10 years, but in my more laddish days of comedy, which is like the first 10 years of my career, I used to do a whole joke where the punchline was in Latin, as if I can remember now, confute tuam in guam femini, which translates, fuck off, you cunt.
Really?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's the only line you know?
I know a little bit more, but it's funny. The other Latin I've forgotten, but that stayed in my, because you do a joke for 10 years, and then that was the punchline.
Where did you learn that? Where was that?
That's a friend of mine.
Right, not in school.
Friend of mine used to date this highly intelligent woman who was doing Latin at Cambridge,
From
And
the Roman era.
and
She's
she
still studying Latin at Cambridge. Wow.
yeah, or was it Oxford now? One of the top ones. She was real smart. The fact that I say
not in Huddersfield, are they?
yeah, well, the fact that I say real smart and not really intelligent would, gives you the idea that I wouldn't have belonged there. If belonged is even worse. My grammar's terrible. You've corrected me on my grammar a few times.
Am I?
Anyway, yeah. And you were right.
I didn't correct you on the other day. Maybe I think you're reading it off the page, so I didn't think to correct you. But it was.
There was one the other day where even I spotted it, and I thought for a professional journalist, I'm pretty sure that's bad grammar. But hey,
I think on episode 14 you might have said Floridians, and I think it's Floridians. Which always strikes me as an odd word, which is why I thought of it. But then I didn't correct you because I thought that maybe it could be acceptable as both, or that you were reading it off the article. So I'm hideously pedantic for somebody who's not very bright, which is like a bad combination. I just like constantly in my head correcting other people with no real academic background to back up what I'm even thinking, let alone what I'm projecting onto others. But I think people from Florida are Floridians, if I'm correct.
You're right. I would have said Floridians, and I remember saying that word Floridians, and I'll tell you why. Because I remember being proud of myself saying it, because that I have difficulty saying weird names. Anything like that. Especially when you get the Chinese people or anything like that. I try so hard to not to be disrespectful, but I just don't know how to pronounce these things.
And before you know it, you're like Bolin Day, Hot Day. You're throwing in some hideous accent, and I'm famous for it, Jim. And infamous. If I was famous, I'd be famous for it. But being that I'm not famous, I'm infamously in my tiny circle of friends famous for just putting my foot in it in terms of I mimic accents when I hear them, Jim. I'm one of those guys that the second somebody's from any Slavic nation, I'm like, oh, what part they're from you? I just it's like a hideous part of my lack of personality that to the degree I'm telling you this, that I've had friends be unable to hold their shit together while I'm doing it, like in restaurants, and as a group get up and leave the table, go to the parking lot to laugh their asses off because I'm speaking in a cod Russian accent to, at the time we were in Monaco of all places, and it was a table of Russians who live, obviously international Russians. They're in Monaco. They were telling us a story about they work for NASA in Houston, whether that's the truth or was their cover story. It seemed authentic because they were in a restaurant in Monaco. But regardless, I was just so play hockey? You play hockey? You just I'm doing it worse than I just do it naturally in situ. But my two buddies at the time just we can't sit at the table and eat food with you while you talk to people who are speaking to you in English. They've already told you that they work at NASA, and you're like, oh, so right wing, left wing, you like to take puck to net hard? Just my buddy's just gotta go. Sorry, we can't do this. We can't help you be this stupid in public. So my apologies, Jim.
Well, you realise, because we're the sorts of people that criticise a variety of politicians, that you've now just given them ammo for you being on the payroll of Vladimir Putin, don't you?
Oh,
anyone that Hillary Clinton disagrees with is a Russian agent. We naturally agree with Hillary Clinton. We disagree with Hillary Clinton. What am I saying? Wash my mouth out with soap water. But we also disagree with Donald Trump as well. But that doesn't matter. The mere fact that we disagree with Hillary Clinton would, in her eyes, make us Russian agents. And you've just given her the ammo to do it. But
Nazis.
Of course.
That works. What do they call that? When two things conflict with each other.
What do they call that? People who are naturally in favour of free speech, who are anti-censorship, that respect that all lives matter, are now indeed being called Nazis. But that's the crazy world that we live in.
That's that's why we're here, Jim Grant.
And to those people, I say, confute tuam in Guam.
Yeah! And when I learn it, I'll say it too.
So, our first article here today, this is from the Mirror, and it's from the 1st of July. Pub landlord Craig Harker took to Facebook to advertise 5 job openings at 3 locations ahead of reopening, and the post went viral thanks to his straight-talking approach. And the headline I forgot to read was "Pub Landlord's Brutally Honest Hunt for Staff labelled Best Job Advert Ever."
Must be able to suck like a drain. How straightforward was he? Sorry.
The days of running pubs
are we
like
3
that
minutes into this episode already? The polish the white off of golf ball jokes are starting.
A pub landlord who pulled no punches in a brutally honest job advert has been praised for his no-nonsense approach. Craig Harker, who runs the George Pub and Grill in Stockton, is looking to fill 5 positions at 3 pubs after the government announced bars and restaurants would be able to reopen their doors on July the 4th. Remember, this article is from the 1st of July. The roles for bar staff, a kitchen chef, a pot washer and an apprentice front of house were posted on social media and racked up hundreds of comments, but it was the wording of the advert which attracted attention, as reported by Teesside Live. Serving up a taste of what's to come, Craig begins the advert by stating, "Yes, you'll be working for an arsehole, but who isn't these days, LOL, but I'm a fair one and everyone who works for me enjoys being at work." He advises anyone of hopefully landing a role to show up smart and presentable, adding, "Don't come to an interview with your chipped fingernails, scraggly hair and just been on a session red eye. Come looking to impress me. If you come and your clothes are creased to bits, then I won't be having your lazy ass anywhere near behind my bar. Before you come down, if you feel your breath is a little tangy, then it probably is. Get yourself a Tic Tac before you burn my eyes."
Wow! What a maniac! You may as well throw in the suck a golf ball through a half-mile of garden hose at that point. Jesus.
He also says, "I don't have the time or patience to teach someone how to be sociable just because you've played Call of Duty for the last 10 years instead of having proper mates." So for the same role in another pub, applicants are told professional experience is essential, not home bar experience or the fact you made everyone a Jaeger bomb in the park using crisp packets. Although that's creative, it's not what I'm after. The advert for pot washer reads, "Yep, it's one of those grubby jobs, but you get good pot washers and shitty ones. I'm after a good one. Pot wash athletes only."
How? Wow.
Good for him. I like this guy.
Oh, well, it's just another realization of it being a seller's, not a buyer's market, isn't it? It's just the desperation. What was the statistics, if you recall, on the weren't there some like vegetable picking jobs that went up in the UK, and 9,000 people applied in the first 3.5 minutes, and then 4 of them showed up at 6 a.m. to actually do the gig. I think it was just like a job seeker's obligation, of course I'll go to Newark at 4 a.m. to be picking rutabagas at 5:10. But then when the call actually came, they were just no, thank you though. Do you recall that at all? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember hearing those stories.
Like that's how my brain works, Jim. It's just like slivers of half-truths that happened at some point in the maybe distant past. It's just but can you imagine for dishwasher jobs being that picky? You think in a perfect world they'd just be begging you to. In a perfect world, he'd be washing his own pots until somebody came in with absolute destitution to be subordinated to in that way. You're already starting with just him treating you like a dick. He's treating you like a dick before you even get to work. It's just ridiculous. Guys like that, I think, he needs to get on the mat. That dude. He talks like you like him? He talks like a guy who needs to wake up in the parking lot and get told where his shoes are when he finally comes around.
I'll tell you why I like it. Yeah. Because you'll find a lot of people, if you work for them, will be like that, from what I hear. But he's totally honest and upfront,
True.
and you know what he's like before you go to the job interview. So if you think, man, he sounds like a real dick, you can figure that out before you've paid the train or the bus fare or petrol money to get to the job interview. And secondly, I don't like the whole let's walk on eggshells so no one ever gets offended or upset mentality. One, I think it stifles free speech, therefore creativity. But secondly, I think it encourages this I am going to get upset about the slight of just words kind of thing. Whereas if you think to yourself, like I said before, from the position of equality, I am the same position of power as everybody else. We're all equal, regardless of gender, orientation, race, or anything like that. So why should I have any power over anyone else? And they don't have any power over me when it comes to words. Now, obviously, if he starts giving you grief on the job, then he does have power because he's your boss. But what I'm saying is, in terms of just words, whatever happened to the whole mentality of sticks and stones might break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Someone who adopts that philosophy, I think, is a lot more likely to go through life with a thicker skin and therefore not be brought down by misery and therefore have a more of a chance for long-term happiness than someone who says, I'm going to get upset and I hate that. And I think that person's passing judgment on me because it empowers the person doing the judging, which, of course, we know, as we've said before, negative people love to feel that power.
Love it.
Just take away that power from them.
Status.
Yeah,
love it.
Do you know what I mean? But
I do entirely.
The whole ethos should be about, we should learn to become tougher, and I don't like the idea of us becoming like, oh, call someone, they're hurting my feelings. Totally. I just don't like that sort of culture. While at the same time, you know, I was going to say, you know, there are some very nasty things that need to be dealt with, but the little things, making mountains of molehills, we shouldn't do that. And I had another
Who's
point.
your best boss? Do you remember your best boss? Did you have a great boss ever?
I've only ever worked for.
I love good comedian talk. It was like, I never really had a job, actually. What boss? You mean my uncle when I was 16? But, yeah.
No, I had a job.
Fired me?
I had a job collecting trolleys at Iceland when I was in my college years.
You were a trolley jockey?
I was, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, but my college years, and I used to work for £2.10 per hour. That was what my wages were, £2.10 an hour back in 95, 96, something like that. And I'll tell you a story actually that it fits into this ethos, and this is why I liked my boss.
Sure.
There were things that I did accidentally that were terrible. I mean, you know, the big sliding doors that, you know, as you go open to the shopping centres, the big glass sliding doors open, that kind of stuff. Well, it was one day that the trolleys were there. I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I had a big pile and the doors just weren't opening. I think, I didn't have to pay for it. It all comes out of Iceland's insurance.
Yeah, sure, they're insured.
But the boss was a good boss to work for, because there was this woman that would come in and she would complain about everyone and everything. And after about whatever shopping trip it was, and after about, I've been working there maybe about 6 months. This was back in the days when you were
getting confident.
Yeah, so you know, she called, I want to speak to the manager, and we're talking, you know, like, she, you know, every little thing. She was just it was almost like a mental disorder or something like that. She just wasn't a very nice person.
Didn't like your shirt, didn't like the day.
Well, what happens is, we are humans, in my opinion, are creatures of habit. So if you practice being offended by every little thing, you're going to become very good at putting it into practice. If you practice being upset at the slightest little thing, you're going to be very good at being upset at the slightest little thing. You're going to spot those opportunities. It's going to come naturally to you. You're going to feed off of the attention that you get. And as we know, living in that state of perpetual stress, victimhood, you know, and again, over little things. There are things where people are legitimate victims, and I think perhaps we all are as a result of being in this extended lockdown at this point, where you do have to stand for your freedoms. But the little things, when you practice being an angry, miserable person, you will find you will become very good at it, and you exist in that state, and all of that effects for the happiness, the immune system, all that kind of stuff. So we are what we practice. And this woman practiced being miserable every time she came in that store for the slightest little thing. I think maybe one time, like there was a legitimate, wet patch on the floor.
So horribly to stop you, you recognize this person as a regular customer as well.
Yeah.
So, the worst. When randoms become regular.
I think she'd been banned from other supermarkets because they were just saying, like I said, this wasn't us.
It wasn't down to Iceland.
Yeah, it wasn't us. I mean, sometimes you get the odd
complaint from Aldi.
This woman would come in every time.
I had hideously, Jim. I'm remembering what I hadn't earlier. I was a cart jockey as well at a place called Food City, and it was one of my early first jobs. And I on one particular day, in fact, I was talking about it the other day with the lady at the checkout in Asda. As we were, one of my items wasn't marked for price, so I asked her if she was getting the info, I think, for a grapefruit or something. And I said, "Is it still a PLU?" Which, I'm always wondering if things from North America or Canada translate over to the UK. And she's like, yes, it is a PLU. So like from, how long ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, longer than that, Jim. When I was in grocery stores, they're still using the PLU system to find out, the price of things. So I asked her if they still did facing, and she didn't catch it immediately. I said, when you like have to walk around, you're basically instructed as any level of employee in a grocery store that when you walk past products on the shelf, that you're to bring the deepest ones into the front and arrange the face of the product to perfectly meet the customer. They call it facing, and she's like, "Yes, we are still told to do the facing." I was like, "Ah!" All of my memories of working in this grocery store in Food City came back, and then I had to tell her why I was fired eventually, Jim. I was facing. I was minding my own business. I'm trying to be as decent and I didn't hurt nobody, Jim. I didn't hurt nobody. I was just a young guy. I needed the $2 an hour, whatever the hell I was getting thrown at the time, and I'm doing my facing job, and I still remember how it was engaged as well. The deli counter lady who was adjacent to where I was like turning the peanut butter to face the customers, she just like had to take a piss or whatever, Jim, and she just said, "Hey, can you watch the deli counter for like, I'm gonna be gone for less than 3 minutes. Can you watch the deli counter and have this fucking place not go completely up the fucking walls in every way?" And it was, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." Of course, if she disappears into the the fucking freezer area, the double doors, so she can go behind where the double glass, so they can see if anybody's shoplifting and to take her dump or whatever the hell she was off to do, or crank a fag or whatever she was up to. And I'm now like literally a minute behind the deli counter. I'd never been there before in my life. I couldn't name any of the meats. I don't know what any of the cheeses are. I don't know anything about delis at all. Words like guacamole or another planet to 17-year-old me. And seconds later, of course, Jim, the moment like the door hit her in the ass, a lady came to the deli counter, just like, "Hi," like, "Hey, the first day on the deli job. Hi, how can I help you?" And she said, "Can I have some 150 grams of that pate?" So she points at the pate. Jim, I wouldn't have known how to. If she wasn't pointing at it, I wouldn't have known what the hell she was talking about. You can only imagine what pate meant to my head. But regardless, she wanted 100, 150, 200 grams, whatever the hell it was. I take this chunk of pate, Jim, it's like kind of a head of ham looking thing, and I take it over to the meat cutting machine. I don't know if you've ever seen these things, but it's just like, you don't even get to own it if you're the grocery store. It's like a contracted piece of equipment that the head office owns, because you can't afford to even insure the thing, let alone clean it like it needs to be done every 9 years. And I take this bit of pate, and I turn it on. I'm in my head right now, Jim. I'm remembering like it's just like a fucking plane starting up, right? Just like the deli starts to shake a little bit as this monstrous bit of machinery just whirs into life. Whatever, 30 billion repetitions per second of the blade. and I pushed the pate into it, Jim, to cut the like chunk that she needed off of it. I'll just never forget. If you know what a Play-Doh fun factory is, like it just like exploded, like kind of half gooey Play-Doh
I was about
liquid.
to say, isn't pate quite cuttable with a normal knife?
That's the one, baby. That's what you're supposed to do. You're just supposed to get one of those cleavers over there and put it on the cutting board, you nitwit, and chop that lady off an inch of what she needs. Instead, Jim, I pushed it into like a ham slicer. Oh my good Lord. It just like goo just shot all the fuck over the place, right? Just like I'm wiping it off me, she's wiping it off for her. There's other people 2 aisles over wondering what's hitting them in the shoulder. Just like full on an explosion of pate across the like deli counter, and I'm just there, just covered in pate goo. Somewhat incredulous because the lady, she doesn't really know what's happening either. She's like wiping shit out of her eyes, wondering like where she even is at that point. And the lady that was, in charge of the deli, she comes back, and I don't think they took me off of cart duty. I don't recall ever working there again. I don't know if I was forced out of the building on that particular day. I don't remember how I was actually fired, but I remember that was the epicenter of my no longer holding my Food City job. So there's your shitty ways to end gigs. I don't know how wonderful spin-off of a boss leaving interesting hiring what do you call it, not ethos but
philosophies.
I was thinking methodologies, but philosophies. Here's the deal. I need a dish pig. I need a dish pig that works hard, and if you dick me around, I'll fire you in a minute. Yeah, you don't.
I remember there was one time at the supermarket that woman had come in and complained, and on the same day I was asked to take a blind lady round the Iceland store to help her do her shopping. And within the space of 5 minutes, about this woman complaining about every little thing. Here was a woman that was blind and was just one of the nicest people. And I made a completely honest faux pas by saying, she was talking about stuff, and I was like, I think that's over in this aisle. Should we go and have a look? Or I think it's down here. Should we go and see? Something like that, And she was making jokes because, of course, she was blind, and she was saying, well, you might be able to look, but I would. And then suddenly I realised, oh my God, if she thinks I was legitimately taking the mickey out of her in some sort of way, that my manager would not have stood for that. He was a good guy. And
your other senses do get enhanced, huh?
But that it's dawned on me. There was a woman there that could have used that as an excuse to be a bit bitter and a bit, unhappy. And she wasn't. She was one of the happiest people that would come into the store. And from that day on, I would always be happy to help show her around. She was a right laugh. And so I learned that at an early age. Sometimes people's happiness is dependent on what's generated internally rather than what the world throws at them externally. And I learned a lot about life working in Iceland.
I love that kind of stuff. I a friend in Vancouver that was telling me about this otter wildman comedian or a kayaker at the time. But I was a comedian in this years ago in Vancouver, and he used to tell. I don't even know why I said comedian there, but he was telling me about this guy that we knew mutually through paddling, who was just a kind of a known sort of maniac. He was a longshoreman, if you know what they are, like works on the docks, and kind of a famously
union guy,
hard living jobs. And so this guy was just sort of a famous, we'd call them hammerheads back home, and he'd like paddled sea kayak to Hawaii, for example. It's like took him months, thought he'd missed the islands of Hawaii. He was eating toothpaste when he finally rocked up on some remote shore there to be rescued. But he's just like a particularly tough guy, and he had a bad car accident and ended up having his a bit of his arsehole removed and some of his internal bits, and they sent like a support group to the hospital room, like sort of post-op, to let him know that he could like meet up on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock or whenever the hell to like, to have a comfort meeting of his new life. He's just like quite famously just said, "So what? I shit in a fucking bag now. Get out of here." Just totally like, "Hey, would you like to come to our support group? We meet at 7 o'clock on Tuesday." "I shit in a bag. Fuck off." Like, okay, all right. Nice to meet you anyway. Fucking back at work on Monday, just a maniac.
See, that's the sort of thing that guy in the pub's culture encourages. The fact that we should just, do you know what? Let's just, as a nation, if we can, mentally toughen up just a little bit, huh? I think, getting upset at the slightest little things and crying because you don't get the new iPad the day it comes out. And I just think a little bit more toughening up. I'm sure it's a controversial, but I personally think just a little bit more of mental toughness across the board. And I don't use the term manning up. I'm using the term because it's not gender specific. I'm using the term toughening up, and just we should stop letting. This is my point. The world is full of horrible people. We cannot change that, but we can change how we let them affect our moods. And at the same time, don't go all the way and be arrogant and let no one affect your moods. But like I said before, if someone you like and respect has a problem, listen. But if they're not and they're no one important to you, don't empower them by acting them as the judge, because instantly you put yourself in the dock by doing that. Put yourself as someone that's free, and it's like, you've got your opinion, I've got mine, and let's have the free exchange of ideas. And that's why I'm so anti-censorship. I think it's for me, censorship is it's for me, when you censor someone, you are disallowing them the right to defense in the court of public opinion. That's what it is. And so that's why I'm always against censorship, and why it sides on the side of tyranny. But let's move into
I like your tenets, Jim Grant.
Let's move into this. But of course, at the same time, be tough, but there's no need to be mean to anyone else or anything like that. But just control how you're
experiencing. I think the UK is sort of one of the pioneers in intervening in what you're hoping for, or asking for, or hoping to return to. I think there's an interpretation that if you want to call it like a stealing process, or what do they call that in steel when they temper something? These processes of tempering people to be more resilient, or these sorts of things that you would have ambition that other people would hold. I think they've interpreted those processes as detrimental, right? Like, it's part and parcel with the whole participation is as important as winning the race, and all these sorts of philosophies. And there's some argument for it, because the countries that I've experienced, New Zealand comes to mind, Canada comes to mind, that are somewhat late to the British wrapped in cotton wool type of approach to raising children. They've reacted to that because of unfortunately, the things that you're talking about, Jim, when you make it a race where, everybody's trying to win and only a few people can, that, at the bottom end of that tier, of that competition pyramid, there's a lot of disenfranchisement of friendships and support in social groups, and ultimately suicides, unfortunately. So, I agree 100% that, I unfortunately believe that's part of the horrible challenge of life that we face, because the Brits have sort of gone the opposite direction, to where there's now no attempt to create a Roger Bannister, or these types of like elites, because the whole concept of being elite create such pain for those below it. So I think I only bring that up because I think there's probably a healthy balance.
You have to be an extreme end to it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about anyone that's gone through anything serious, like a sexual assault or anything like that. I'm not telling anyone like that to toughen up. I'm just saying, when someone you don't,
I get that. That's what, I say like better happy medium. Let me clarify that as well, just by saying that like the parallels between New Zealand and Canada are, for example, the suicide rates of young men who, and now, young women who don't get into the, don't make the rugby team for New Zealand, and for Canada, it's don't make the hockey team. So we're in that kind of, that pyramid structure of competition leads to a lot of destruction along the way. I think there's a happy balance. Sorry.
Yeah. And if you're a Cruise podcast regular listener, I know that you've got the ability to think for yourself, So just, if you're thinking for yourself, I think you're already head and shoulders above a certain percentage of the UK population. And I'm not kissing the arse of our listeners. I just think that that's the case, judging by the feedback. People seem to know what's going on in the world and they're thinking themselves. Remember that the next time someone you don't know and therefore don't respect and has no power over you gives you grief or sends you a mean, nasty comment online, just remember, they don't matter. And you thinking for yourself, it takes a little while because the stress on your shoulders builds up, but you just got to remember, move on. I don't care.
Be your boss.
Negative people will be negative, and they're usually not critically thinking sort of people anyway, and they're usually miserable. That's the one thing I would say. People who are mean to others are usually quite miserable themselves. So remember that when you are walking away from the situation. Just remember yourself, like, there's no need for me to, think, I want to do this to them or I want to do that to them, because, the ultimate punishment is that they're going to wake up tomorrow morning and they're still going to be them, miserable.
Well,
right. Let's get to the news. Let's get to the news.
Hit it.
So this is another one.
Grocery store employee stories that I won't digress to. Let's hear the news.
So this is
Cruise.
Wednesday, the 1st of July. Sandra Laville and Neem McIntyre. Exclusive. This is from The Guardian. Water firms discharged raw sewage into England's rivers 200,000 times in 2019. England's privatised water firms paid 57 billion in dividends since 1991. Right. So there you go. And I've got to register for free to carry on reading, but you get the idea.
You got it. You got the gist of that one.
So to speak, yeah.
Yeah. How hideous. Oh, Jim, that's it. It's corporate criminality is just so gross. But it's, as much as well, the main, I think I've got some background just through curiosity of that issue. I believe, well, maybe it is a different. It's maybe a different water table problem, but to my knowledge, a lot of that happens because of infrastructure issues with the antiquated infrastructure of British waterways. I don't know if that's exactly why effluent is flowing where it shouldn't, but I know that Britain has great problems with that. But it's not just, if I can allay any, not that one of my favorite things about the UK is that nobody takes personal pride for the screw ups of the operation, of the empire, as it were. It's a very, very relieving thing when you meet people that are just like, rational enough to realize that when water companies are piling shit into people's drinking water, it's not their fucking problem, But I can say that even years ago, and sorry, even currently, right now, if anybody wants to look up, in Vancouver particularly, but also in Victoria, Canada, two utterly pristine places. Why Brits fly to Vancouver just to go look at killer whales, or to see some of the most clear waters famously in the world in the mid-Pacific off of Vancouver Island. But incredulously, both Vancouver and Victoria, the capital of British Columbia, on the tip of Vancouver Island, even worse for this story, pointing right across the water from an international partner, the US. So I mean, there's always Canadian vitriol towards the Yanks, but this is a situation where the city of Victoria, for years and years and years, and continuing today, right now, is just pumping raw shit into the sea. pointed the pipe basically at its neighbor to the south. And it's unbelievable that not only, like, I mean, I think the one you're talking about in the UK is probably through, cracks or problems or accidents, Jim, but these are like, quite blatant. And again, I mentioned Vancouver, they're doing the same thing. If you look, the pipe comes out near Vancouver's airport, Richmond, British Columbia, and they're just, fucking big. And it's interesting as well because they create their own ecosystems, obviously, because the water temperature changes greatly. There's obviously, a lot of different, material for the, for different ecosystems in the ocean to focus on, to sort of glom around. So it's embarrassing as I tell you that, but I don't, want Brits to think that they're the only people that had problems with it. And when I told you earlier on, Jim, that I had a lot to talk about this, it's even more ridiculous that, like, one of, if not the most beautiful part of Canada, bar none ever, the first ever national park in Canada, Banff National Park, I worked in for 3 or 4 years straight from like the time I was like 16, 17 to like 18, 19 as a raft guide. And our job actually was taken away because of the coliform count in the Bow River. Because at peak times, particularly, the only times that you would want to be in a river in Alberta, British Columbia, based on our winters and our shoulder seasons, autumn and fall, or fall and spring, are like all, quite cold. But regardless, you would only really be on the water for the few months of the summer. But those are also the peak tourist seasons. And I think they've rectified it now, but it went on for years. And as I say, Jim, I lost my job because of this. We could no longer take people down the Bow River on rafts because the town of Banff, again, like the brooch, the center of one of the most beautiful places, bar none, maybe on the planet, that at peak times in the summer for like decades, the water treatment plants would literally, Jim Grant, literally overflow with shit. I'm talking like 4 times capacity. Like there's 4 times the amount of shit that should be down here being processed and, in some way released back into the environment as gray water is now just like blasting over the top, like waterfalling shit into, like, again, some of the most pristine rivers. And all of this, like, this is all part of an ecosystem that unbelievably, I could abbreviate this entire story, Jim, to tell you that, like, another 100 miles downriver, where the river actually, like, comes out of the mountains and gets quite lazy and wide, you wouldn't believe how big the fish get. So, I mean, there's a lot that's going on here. And the reason being is because all of this, coliform, all of this fecal matter creates a lot of plant life. And plant life contributes to a lot of insect life, and insects then create massive brown and rainbow trout. It's a dirty little secret of Canada, but it exists. But I tell you this because as a raft guide, before we actually lost our jobs, before we were actually, like, because of the actual, like, limitations of coliform count in the water, we were unable, like, unauthorized to be on the water paddling around and having fun. Prior to that, Jim, we would have to give safety talks, and we would include in those safety talks, I kid you not, we would, like, have to tell people, when you see Jim, I don't even want to, like, if you see tampons, if you see condoms, if you see, as we would call them at the time, finless brown trout, please get your feet out. Don't hit them with your paddle, please. And this, I'm now even remembering, this is back in the day when we would still allow the passengers, the customers, to actually have a paddle, because some time right around that same period of time, a couple of years around that time where I was working as a guide, we also murdered about 22, I think, 20, I'm pretty sure it was 22 German tourists on rivers in British Columbia. And the reason that happened is because all of those tourists who these companies were relying on for the horsepower of these rafts essentially somebody had ended up succumbing to a heart attack on the trip, and the commotion of the heart attack led the boats to drift where they weren't supposed to be. And by the time the guides who were dealing with a heart attack victim on their boat began to address the greater situation of like getting the boat to shore and out of danger, they realized that almost all of the customers had like let their paddles either float away or couldn't find them again. So they ended up going into a log jam, and like it was just mayhem and carnage, Jim. So like this period in Canadian history for me is like extremely volatile. It's strong in my memory, but we were unable to continue our jobs because of the amount of shit that was pouring into the river. And this is late 80s now. So
So one comment and one question about what you've just said there. So you are British people now going over to Canada to see the killer whales and saying, "Oh, look, honey, there's a killer whale," and the other guy going, "Nah, that's just a giant turd." And the question for you is, when you were doing that job in Banff for those 3 months, did the reports of Sasquatch sightings go up?
Luckily enough, it's I know that they're in similar environments, or they're believed to be in similar environments. But I'm like, you think we know a lot of grocery store stories. Now Jim's brought up Sasquatches. We'll be here all week. But but of all of my like interest and knowledge, which is acute regarding Sasquatches, it wasn't really an area, as odd as it seems. That area wasn't even now. Like I spend a lot of time looking up and researching Sasquatch sightings. But look, I'm one of those guys. But anyway, even like other stories didn't much focus around that part of the Rockies, as odd as it is. The Sasquatch stories are far richer on the West Coast, so about 600 miles away from there. That said, well, no, actually, not that said. If you ever look at the Sasquatch sighting like maps, which you can quite easily find yourself, you'll see
that exactly where Craig Campbell had summer jobs.
yeah, bastard. But you'll see that they're much more centered closer to the coast, and all the way down, of course, to the to California, and particularly the main focus is through the Northern California and Oregon, which of course is the focal point of the Gimlin-Patterson footage of 1967, I believe, September or October, that captured Patty, which not many people know. If you ever look up that footage, Patty walking on the beach, that most people don't know that it was a girl Sasquatch. Get a little tit shot in there, little wobbling jubblies as the old Sasquatch is walking on the beach. So, but most of the focal area, oddly, as odd as it is, I bet you, well, I'm thinking now that it's temperature. I was thinking, Jim, there's so much to go into on this. I thought that I would talk about maybe it's the environment, but then I realized, and that's something, you learn new things even in the Sasquatch world. There's a lot of people who believe Sasquatches to be extraterrestrial. So whether or not they worry about how chilly it is when they can, shapeshift and leave the planet at will, that's another thing. I don't say that I concur with these things. I'm saying that exists in the. As shocking as it is. Oh, you and I, Jim, we've talked about these things before, haven't we? It's a curiosity of. I still remember when I said to my other like-minded friends, I was just like, the oddest thing I saw the other day, that people were not only that I was warmed because they were talking about Sasquatches, but then it was made mention that there's some people that believe the Sasquatch is actually an extraterrestrial being and is able to teletransport at will. And like my group, only in our little types of worlds, Jim. My buddies there were just like, oh yeah, I heard that. It's like, what? What? That's totally like, I had never in all of my years of curiosity and interest did I think that these hairy bastards were also able to fucking go to another planet whenever they snap their hairy fingers. So
I'm a Gigantopithecus man myself. You know, they look exactly like Sasquatch. We know that they definitely existed. We know that they definitely existed, like 40,000 years ago. We know that there's no known reason for them to have died out. And we know that where the fossils have been found in the exact areas these things are seen. So it doesn't take a far stretch for me to say that a known creature in the area that it once was, just a few of them survived. For me, that's not really much. You know, you got the coelacanth being found in the Indian Ocean in, was it 1938 or something? Yeah, I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm researching stuff for years.
Yes, absolutely.
But, you know, that was from millions of years ago. So, you know,
now that we're pumping
tens of thousands of years ago, that's nothing.
Like and now that we're pumping effluent into the sea like we are, Jim, they're never going to be wanting for something to eat.
Yeah, yeah. Know? Now, you said a phrase there, Craig. You said when we're talking about this sort of stuff, we could be here all week, which I think would be a good time to tell listeners what we've got planned for them for the weekend.
Yes, if you're going to be here all week. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've decided that we're going to do a one-off special on the whole Ghislaine Maxwell situation. You're probably thinking, wow, this is the biggest story in news. Why aren't these guys covering it? Sure. We've decided that we're going to put a whole show dedicated to it, and we're going to be talking about some of the medical evidence why wearing a mask long-term is bad for you as well. So it's going to be a show along the signs of falling masks.
Yeah, we're going to try and get that out on Saturday.
Yes, look for that on Facebook. Please. Saturday at 6 p.m. and Saturday on YouTube at 9 p.m. So we're going to do a whole special just covering two topics in depth, rather than the myriad of topics.
Part of the big stuff. Part of the big stuff ahead for the cruise.
Yeah, and we planned to talk about it in Paris, but we never got around to it because we always spend up our time rattling. Shall we try and blitz about, let's set ourselves a target of trying to get through some 10 articles. No, interrupt.
Grocery stories or Sasquatch stories. I'll try to hold my buzzer.
By all means interrupt, but let's keep it story specific rather than going from one tangent to another. I mean, we've talked about going for a job advert with the guy being a brutally honest boss, and we've ended up Sasquatches and turds in Vancouver. Welcome to Cruise episode 15. So, right, our next article: reopen pubs will take names and details of drinkers. This is Monday, the 22nd of June. Obviously, I want to know if this happened. So, pubs, but I didn't want to bother going out to a pub. I thought I'd let all the mayhem, I'll go out as the month goes.
First weekend. Take care of
yeah. Pubs, bars and restaurants will have to take the names and contact details of customers before they are allowed in under any plans being drawn up for the next stage in lifting Britain's lockdown. If any cruise listeners went out in Britain on this weekend
and lived,
do tell us what it was like, both in terms of numbers and whether whether the bar staff actually tried to implement this and whether they successfully implemented it or failed and gave up. We'd be interested to know. So any cruise listeners, what was it like going out on July the 4th in Britain? And our next, speaking of all those measures, and more of them are coming in according to The Guardian, and they're here to stay.
Sure.
Oliver Holmes in Jerusalem, Justin McCurry in Toko, and Michael Safi in Amman wrote this on Thursday, the 18th of June. Coronavirus mass surveillance could be here to stay. Experts say use of invasive digital and physical measures soars as the pandemic spreads. Extensive surveillance measures. Basically, you get the idea. All this stuff that's coming in, as soon as people stop sneezing, it's here to stay, apparently, Mr. Campbell.
Right. Yeah, great. Tyranny is here to stay. What a shock, Jim. What a shock. You see all of these measures that were preordained long before the event, implemented because of the event, and then not rescinded when it's clear that the event was at least overblown and trumped beyond its means. So none of this is a shock anymore, Jim. We're just taking it. We're taking it just like we've been told was going to happen, and it's happening.
And
tyranny
not
in
everyone,
no time.
Not everyone in the world is taking it, though. Norway ends virus tracing app, deletes data over privacy concerns.
Good
This
for
is
them.
the Associated Press
Norges.
staff
I love the
contact, and
Norges.
this is reported in CTV News. I think this is a Canadian
Yes, it
channel.
is. There you go. It's telling the truth. Sorry, it's the truth. Horrible.
So the Norwegians aren't taking it, and the reason they're not taking it is they have concerns about privacy.
Yes.
Obviously, the British government must be using a far more system that respects privacy, or either that, or perhaps, Craig, they don't care about the privacy of their citizens. I mean, what a shock that would be.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And speaking of people that they don't seem to care about, NHS coronavirus heroes face 2-year pay freeze betrayal as recession hits the UK. And this is from the Mirror by Ben Glaze on the 14th of May. And there have been articles over they've given themselves more money over this coronavirus, I'm sure of it. There was like a pay rise and expenses and all that kind of stuff. I don't really want to go into it without the sources in front. But off the top of my head, I'm pretty certain that MPs haven't had MPs have had a little they put a little nose in the trough over this coronavirus, and they've got something out. But the NHS staff,
zilcheroo.
Be grateful for that.
Yeah, it's gross. It's gross.
Pay your bills with rounds of applause, guys. I actually personally never went out there to give them the round of applause, because that whole thing reminded me of two things really. The 2 minutes of emotion in 1984, and it reminded me of the Kim Jong-un in North Korea, you must give your public display of emotion at this time on this day kind of thing. So it didn't really sit right with me. But you give me a petition or a cause that's going to help get these guys a pay rise, I'm right in with that.
Yeah, I'm proactive in that one.
These people did a fantastic job. I'm so grateful to them. The whole country is grateful to them. I would just rather show my gratitude by putting some money in their pocket so they can pay for stuff than a round of applause at 8 o'clock looking like what effect. You ever got one of those wind-up monkeys with the cymbals that you wind up and just go...
Familiar with them. I certainly didn't have one in my house, but
and especially when they got the old pots and pans going, honestly, I'm not knocking anyone that wants to do that, because your heart's in the right place, you're showing your gratitude, and I'm not Mickey taking anyone that wants to do that. But for me, that's what I saw, and I didn't want to partake of it because that's what I saw. But as a libertarian, I respect your right to do that, and so I never said anything, and I never went out to my front door and said, "Shut up! You have any idea the racket you're making?" I never said that, because I respect their right to express their emotions in their own way. But for me, I would rather get them a pay rise. What do you reckon, Craig?
I'm just ruminating now on the that monkey. I think is an evil. I have it in my head as evil from a Stephen King book from a billion years back. I think it was a series of short stories, but it had that crazy monkey on the front of it. He's just such a scary prick. It had the survivor type in it, which was a short story. If you've not read it, probably you could blast through it in a few minutes. But it's a pretty amazing story about a guy who's shipwrecked and is trying to feed himself, and eventually trying to catch, I think, a gull on the beach. He snaps his ankle, so he's stationary as a castaway, trying to feed himself, and he comes across part of the bounty from the shipwreck that he was a part of is a box of I believe medical grade morphine, but it might be something more coarse than that. But regardless, he starts to self-medicate, and then begins eating himself to stay alive at his own extremities. I'm explaining a Stephen King horror film there, Jim, but the end result is that this guy is continually, as a mantra, repeating the McDonald's 2 all beef patties, lettuce, sauce, pickles, cheese, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun. Anyway, as he's like chopping off his own fingers for dinner. I'm trying to remember the name of the book itself, but it's like it turned the crazy monkey into like you can only imagine. Stephen King gets a hold of things that are so innocuous as a kid's toy, but it just like like and the moment that you mentioned it, I was off to the races on scaring the shit out of myself that way, but.
And also from even episode 1, I was always one of our passionate subject. We did it a lot on our early podcasts. I was moaning about their lack of PPE. So I wasn't up for clapping them. I was up for keeping them safe and getting them more money.
Yeah,
and,
I intersected. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
And I just want to say, I know a lot of people who work for the NHS, and they were all fine with me having that opinion. They would all. I asked them, would you prefer?
Well, they prefer money or claps,
or would you prefer safety and money? And I can tell you that if you think that they went for the applause, you might be incorrect.
Yeah.
I could say that much. And
sorry. I had the awkwardness of accidentally taking the rubbish out, Jim, to the bins, and just not realizing that it's like 8:03 or whatever, and like wandering out in my underwear to chuck some fucking potato skins in the garbage bin, and then just like, hi, hey, how are you guys doing? Just, we're here clapping for the NHS. And just, oh God, are you? I was like, yeah. The mouthful that you just gave is a hard thing to come up with in the spur of the moment. So, it was awkward.
Like I said, I never wanted to. If that's what they want to do, let them do it. But
well, absolutely, yeah. I just felt I felt on the spot because I obviously wasn't recognizing at that point, a weekly tradition. And again, I feel the same way you do. It's patronizing to say the least.
Yes,
and very Sovietsky, very hive-mindy, group-thinky. It's all part of that crap. Yeah, it's all part of that same brainwashing garbage.
Yeah, my nurse and people that working in the NHS, they were sort of split 50-50 between we find it patronizing and we like it, but So there was mixed results for the NHS from what I spoke to anecdotally. It was about 50-50. But in terms of what would you rather have, PPE and cash or applause, it was pretty much 100%.
100%. Pretty much unanimous. Until I could pay the rent with your clapping. No, thanks.
Yeah, pretty much.
Against the risk.
Yeah. And last time I wanted to start a new section called Aren't Crews Great? Or, Crews Nostradamus or something like that. But basically, we look back and we've got mainstream news sources reporting to you what we told you on Crews a couple of months ago. Admittedly, we're getting it from...
you see,
it's almost like a weird thing with the mainstream news, isn't it? There's like we break it quietly, but we don't do anything about it because it goes against the narrative. Well, put it this way: I haven't seen any government advice on this. This particular subject is important. Okay. But here we go. This is from the FT, and this is from there's no date on it because I haven't subscribed. But when I got the original thing, it did have the date on it when you look at it on social media. And this was like a week ago or something like that. But here we go: vitamin D promoted as potential defense against coronavirus. We specifically said that back in our single-digit podcast numbers. I can't remember which one it was, but we covered that a lot. And I was listening to people like, what's his name? Is it Dr. John Campbell? No relation. He was saying about the importance of vitamin D. And I don't agree with everything he says, but he knows his stuff when it comes to nutrition. So, this is what we were saying, and we were getting it from mainstream news sources and everything, but it never really seems to go big unless everyone goes on it. It's amazing. It's almost like there's the mainstream news that comes out but doesn't get much attention, and then a month later or 2 months later, it's like, did you know that? Having did you see? It's good for your immune system.
Did you see? You must have seen this week, Jim. Sky has done a volte-face on the Wuhan source of
Oh yes,
yeah, you
that's
see
the
that? Yeah, of
bit
course.
I
You
was
know,
going
just
to
like,
bring up that
yeah, of course.
that
Just after.
I couldn't load up. Do you remember he saying in the thing, there was articles I wanted to do in the last 24 hours to add
Oh
to
yeah.
it, but they just weren't loading up. But that was one
Okay.
of them.
Yeah, that was one of
Yeah,
them.
and
Yeah.
what episode did we tell you that on? Was it episode 1, I think, that we went through?
It's like,
You know,
if they're not hearing it from British deep state sources, like American deep state sources aren't enough for them to vet, so they got to go just to totally embarrass
Nobel
themselves with
Prize
the
winners.
bat soup ridiculousness. Hey, you're the bat soup in the place that doesn't have any bat soup. The bat that flew out of the bowl that got in someone's eye. It got in the eye, and then they kissed a girl, and whoa, look, and then it's in the sewage system in Spain a year earlier. Yeah, we're Sky. Keep watching. Keep watching. Nitwits.
Yeah,
Nitwits.
Nobel Prize winners, not enough. Biochemistry professors, not enough.
Yeah, not enough.
Who said
enough.
100%
Not
man-made?
enough.
Not enough.
No.
It went from a bat to a snake to a this, that, the other, all backed up by Chinese people who said anything otherwise would probably get out executed. Yeah, and those Chinese scientists. It's not like if they admit that putting China on the chopping block for billions of pounds of compensation. It's not as if they're going to get their organs harvested, Craig. We know how friendly the Chinese regime treats its own people. So, but there we go. So, speaking of that, this dovetails into it quite nicely here. This is from Forbes. Enrique Dan, senior contributor, and this is from the 28th of June. TikTok. Beneath its fun exterior lies a sinister purpose. 3 years since TikTok was launched, the video sharing social network grown rapidly to accumulate more than 2 billion downloads, one of the most popular apps of the moment, beating even Instagram or YouTube in consumption time in the United States, United Kingdom or Spain, particularly among younger age segments. TikTok might be described as a repository of canned content. I had to struggle not to use the word suppository.
I was going to say that's immediately. I thought that's exactly what it is.
Great minds think alike, and fools rarely differ. Up to the audience to decide.
All the time.
Yeah. to be conveniently remixed with user-created videos. So blah 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 blah. And of course, if you dare to criticize TikTok, you'll simply be told you're too old to understand it, that young people have different criteria to yours, which is all well and good. But what is TikTok? How reliable are the criteria of young people? So just having a little problem loading here. Give me a second to catch up with that. And it says here, US armed forces have forbidden personnel from using it and describe it to cybersecurity. Israeli cybersecurity company Checkpoint has investigated it and concludes it has backdoors and major vulnerabilities, as well as overall security issues. The US government is also investigating.
They know.
Meanwhile, Reddit CEO and co-founder describes it as fundamentally parasitic app that is always listening and warns that installing it what he calls spyware.
Even worse than Facebook.
I know, yeah. Several child advocacy groups says it poses a clear risk to children. Apple claims it has caught TikTok using clipboard capture mechanisms to spy on millions of users. Now, I'd like to point out that
info, to my knowledge, is that not part of the condemnation? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, when Apple condemns someone over privacy concerns, you know one of two things, Craig. Either it's really bad, or they're trying to eliminate the competition.
Absolutely.
And so you've got Reddit could be trying to eliminate the competition.
Honor among thieves.
US armed forces and Israeli cybersecurities. Who knows what vested in? Now, I'm not defending TikTok. What I'm saying is, I probably think I have no expert knowledge, but my gut tells me they're probably right. And at the same time, it serves their purpose to try and crap on one of their opposition potential competitors. But in the words of Kurt Cobain, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. So just because you're criticizing one of your major competitors doesn't mean your criticism isn't correct, but it gives you, of course, an extra motivation to do so, does it not?
I don't know if I ever told you, I bothered on a trip to the US, driving through a little town. what's the name of it? Oh, little town in Washington. Anyway, I woke up there. The family, we woke up there on our trip down the West Coast, and Raymond, Washington. And so I first of all digressed into, if you look up Raymond Washington, he's the original member of the Crips gang in California. So of course that was like over a coffee in the morning, digressing into that genesis of interest in American history. But then I was looking around to see, hey, you're in Raymond, Washington. You're only there for an hour while you have your coffee to further drive down the coast. And thought, what's going on in Raymond? Oh, what the heck here? Oh, Jim Grant, what's going on in Raymond, Washington? It's the first ever Nirvana gig took place in a little farmhouse about 2 minutes away in the sat-nav. So we drove down through the beautiful countryside of that part of the world and pulled up, and it's just as it was. They had Cobain was there. He was invited by the father of a kid, I believe, that he was in school with. But regardless, they played. And
did you get into the concert okay, or was there something in the way?
No, this is like a little, just like a dead end little cul-de-sac, and in the middle of the sort of beautiful northwestern rainforest backdrop that is only a tiny little farmhouse. So they played in the basement. It went as bad as you can possibly imagine, and I say bad. It went that all the girls at the party wanted to sleep with Kurt and his friends, and all the like logger thugs in the party wanted to kill them, which eventually they tried to do, and led to Nirvana having to escape their first ever gig through a window to save their own lives. And even more interestingly than that, if there's any Nirvana fans out there, a few years ago, the daughter of the man who invited them to play in his house, I believe a musician of some repute himself, found in a novel, like on their bookshelf, a whole bunch of Polaroids from the night. So they've got like, and not only that, but you can right now, if you want to turn us off, you can find the actual audio of it. So you can hear the first ever Nirvana gig ever on like this real scratchy, weird tape recording. And you can see some photos of the actual event before they had to be run away. So that's Raymond, Washington. I'll never forget that.
Escaping through a window. That's enough to drain you.
We drove down a remote road on a river to see where there'd been a massacre, of course, because that's how America is. Every time you're like, hey, what's to do in bumfuck America? Oh, I guess we could go see where those 8 people were turned into hamburger. That'd be interesting. Doesn't matter where you stop in the States. There's always just like somewhere that, ooh, that happened here. Okay, let's keep driving.
Wow. Did you dress up, or did you come as you are? Have you noticed that's the third one I've done?
I'm so happy. But today I found my friends in my head. I'm so horny. That's okay. We can do this all night, Jim.
And that sounds like those girls were the inspiration for Daddy's Little Girl. Oh no, Preach. What was that called? I'm not that much of a fan. I just know the chorus. Anyway, we're digressing. How long have we done, by the way, Mr. Campbell?
We're an hour and 10-ish, so we can wrap up any minute, I think. Unless any of our fans want to hear more about angry bosses or grocery stores or Sasquatches or Nirvana, then we can keep going. But we'll probably release you to your own lives to.
So did you meet Kurt Cobain?
I have never met Kurt Cobain. No, the closest I come tangentially is I have a friend from Seattle named Steve Nielsen, who actually I think has moved to San Fran now, but the last time I knew him was in Seattle, and he had Nirvana stay on his couch when they were playing at his university, I think in Kirkland, Washington, way back. But just like interestingly, they played. I believe, if I'm recalling the story, he told me the gig had gone similarly. Norway to the show in the first ever gig that they did in the farmhouse. They basically, got bottles thrown at themselves and nearly beaten up, and then just needed a place to stay. They stayed on my buddy Steve's floor, and then were gone in the morning. And I have, interestingly, one other flash with performers or musicians of that caliber. A guy who I actually spoke to on the internet today, a friend of mine from Toronto named Jay Brown. He lived at a big house that a couple of my buddies lived at. But on one particular night in Vancouver, as weird as things are, Jim Grant, they had Roland Gift stay on their couch, just like, playing, you'd imagine a pretty big room in Vancouver. I'd imagine one of the bigger venues, but just, before you know it, you're partying with, what's their big one? Is she drives me crazy. Yeah, suddenly that guy, every time I hear she drives me crazy, I just think, oh yeah, that guy slept on my buddy's couch.
There's a whole podcast here called Craig's Karaoke forming in my mind. As we look into it. So our final two stories of the yeah.
I think we got through them.
Well,
that was a
I'm scrolling down. We got through less than 25% of. Actually, I'll tell you what.
I thought so. That makes sense.
I'll tell you what. There's one that I reckon we should do 3 because I wanted to throw this one in there as well. So our last 3 stories. This is from 28th of June by Robert Booth, social affairs correspondent for The Guardian. COVID-19, risk of death in UK care homes 13 times higher than in Germany. Figures show Britain second only to Spain among major European countries. Care home residents were more likely to die of COVID-19 in the UK than in any of the major European countries apart from Spain, analysis of global data has revealed. But don't worry, Craig, I'm sure that's got nothing to do with the austerity Tory cutbacks of the last 10 years, cutting down everything to the bone. I'm sure it was just a bit of bad luck.
Or knowingly putting people who had tested positive for COVID from hospitals into those care homes. It couldn't have had anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Or as you call it, I think, malfeasance in office or manslaughter. Or there's all kinds of terms for it. Murder. Some people use the term murder. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah. So we've covered that ad nauseum on this show, but there's another one that I just wanted to bring up to you to say, as we were bringing it along, to say, they're doing this, guys, and this is really bad. Well, look at the result. So
the winners.
We here at Cruise take no pleasure in trying to shout from the treetops to say that this could be a problem, and for us to have to report on our 15th episode that it was. Something good, well, in my opinion, that the UK government is doing is Hong Kong. UK makes citizenship offer to residents, and the way
a war overture to China.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, at the end of the day, these, we've got long-standing ties to. When did it end in '97? Under Chris Patton or something. Just going up. Yeah, 100-year.
99, wasn't it? It was
something like that. So we had a lot of ties there. There were certain deals about, if you're going to live there, but you'll have certain rights, because people were, imagine the Chinese taking it back, and you were about Hong Kong about to be given over to one of the most tyrannical one-child policy, will harvest your organs if you politically disagree with its regime in the world. It's good to see
that film. Yeah, I agree.
It's good to see my government honouring a deal for a bloody change, to be perfectly honest.
Utter shame what's going on in Hong Kong. Utterly. It's fate also, but it's just, anybody who spent a lot of time, as I have, in Hong Kong, it's just, every story that you hear coming out of it now, even snippets, just say it's a different place now. Either help us or please don't come anymore. We're scared, all the kind of things. And of course, there's a propaganda wall that's hitting all of us, Jim. We know that. But there's also, the reality that on the ground, it's become far more draconian.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get loads. We're moving towards China more and more every day with the track and trace and that
Oh, we're
it's not so
totally
bad now, but the
totally,
police over.
and with our
Some
support of the
police over it.
WHO, with
Yeah.
our support for for our lack of condemnation of how they treat their own citizens on a
Yeah.
daily basis. That in its own way is a enabling of a totalitarian regime. It's and I say that also. I'm reading more and more, as I'm sure you do, Jim. You try and read the counter argument. I know that there's like there's an empire battle going on where we're also vilifying them, on every level in some disproportionate ways. If people aren't aware that, like, the CIA was involved in Tiananmen, you give your head a shake. Of course we are. We're there, shaking the tree to see what sort of bad fruit can fall off, just because it helps us if they're weakened. But that doesn't mean that there's not really bad shit going on all over the place, including that what we know about Wuhan and what we know about environmental concerns. There's a reason why they've been able to make our Christmas toys for the last 50 years, because there's no health and safety laws in place, and you don't have to pay anybody's pensions because they've jumped off the building.
I never give in to the cult of personality on any politician or anything like that. So I have spent many hours on this podcast slagging off
Jim Grant, not a Maoist.
Yeah, slagging off Boris Johnson and his government, and rightly so, in my opinion, because I think their handling of this has been awful. However, I don't go into the cult of personality where it means I now hate everything Boris Johnson does. I'm able to look at everything, and rather than I don't hate the man. I hate each and every one of his decisions that he's made on its own merits. And most of them I have criticised or found I don't like them. But in this particular case, just because I have disliked his previous 99 decisions doesn't mean that if he does one
on its own merit,
one good thing in 100, I'm not going to. So you know what? Credit where credit's due. And the UK has stepped up to the plate in the name of freedom and honoured a deal. And I can't criticise my government. I can criticise them for a lot of other things, including not giving those nurses a pay rise. But for that, I've got to say, it's like the whole thing it's almost like the whole reverse psychology. It's like when in pro wrestling, it's like, if Trump came out and cured cancer, then it would be like, Trump has closed down a number of specialist cancer hospitals. He's put a number of people out of work. Do you know what I mean? It's that's the kind of, that when you get into that cult of personality, you can't see that sometimes they do good things, and that can be used against you to manipulate you.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Exactly. And and you lose your ability to debate in the public arena with the vast people, because they go, well, they're not able to see things for their own merit anyway. They come from a very biased perspective. But over here on Cruise, I spend, for every 100 stories we read out about the UK government, 99 of them are painting them, in my opinion, in a bad light. But that doesn't mean when they don't do something good, I'll say that as well. And I like that. I like what they've done. The PM said Hong Kong's freedoms were being violated by a new security law. That's ironic with what they're going to pass, but still credit where credit's due. And those affected would be offered a route out of the former UK colony. About 350,000 UK passport holders and 2.6 million others are eligible will be able to come to the UK for 5 years. Fair play
for us.
Yeah, let's just quarantine them first for a couple of weeks. Nothing personal, but yeah, good for the UK government. I like that. I like that. So good on the UK government. Our final article here tonight is one close to our industry, Craig. In fact, I actually think I picked it up from your social media thing originally.
Oh no, what did I say this time?
Well, you didn't get banned for another month, so I presume it was all okay. But this is from yesterday, Sunday, the 5th of July. Our comedy industry is in crisis. The government must act now to save it. And this is by Romesh Ranganathan. I believe I've met Romesh a couple of times back in the early days of his career. Nice guy, seemed to me. I haven't had any dealings with him in years, but always seemed like a nice guy. But to me, it's like, hang on, comedians have spent their entire careers slagging off government, or at least I know I have.
Yeah.
So for us to turn around and go, I know we've
Thanks.
insulted you, can we have some money, please? You know. So again, I'm not disagreeing with what Romesh is saying, and I'm applauding him for saying it, but I'm just saying, you know, there's a little bit of my pride that's like, I've spent years slagging these people off, and in my opinion, rightly so. Just going there. Can you save the industry that has predominantly been slagging you off on one form or another for years? It's a little bit egg on the face of the comedy industry, but I'm not saying that it doesn't need it. So those are my two thoughts. What I'm saying is I don't really have an opinion on this piece. I'm weighing up. He's right to say it, but at the same time, I'm thinking, you know, I wouldn't blame the government if they said, well, you've been taking a piss out of us for 40 years. Screw you.
Should be.
You know, yeah, and we should be. Exactly. So those are the thoughts.
I don't like that whole umbrella term, our industry, Jim. I don't like any of that, like that we're on some sort of team that we haven't discussed, or that somehow we're like some, you know, block that have anything in common, because I want to keep personally my autonomy to make comment on all things. I think, you know, that's part and parcel, certainly with the stand-up, you know, trade, whatever you want to call it, industry, if you want to call it that if you don't have personal autonomy of opinion within the context of your own career, or, you know, what you do, you're just like a happy clappy seal for hive mind BS. Which the comedy industry, as we're seeing with the banning of South Park, not South Park, but Faulty Towers, and, you know, Python, and all the, you know, all these sort of edicts that have come down from cultural Marxism, BS, just opinion that thinks that their opinion is the pervading, you know, pervasive opinion, and to me that, you know, Ramesh's overture there just reeks of that, reeks of being on some sort of unnamed team, and I can't stand. I did not get into stand-up to do anything other than speak my mind to strangers for hopefully their support. I don't have any illusions about being on the comedy team. Hey, we're all on the comedy team. I just, like, it makes me ill. I get crap in my throat from my tummy comes up, Jim, when I talk about this, because it makes me so ill to assume that I'm part of this, like, monolith of opinion, because it just leads to everything that I've mentioned. It just leads to the banning of, you know, oh, that comedian doesn't talk like the other comedians. You know, it's just like, who cares what, you know, individual opinions are? It's within this fabled group. I can't stand it.
Yeah, I suppose what I was trying to say, I like Romesh, I respect Romesh, I agree with the point he's making. I just wouldn't blame the government if they said, well, you guys are asking for money so you can keep your industry intact, so you can slag us off for another 40 years. Screw you. That was the only point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Well, before we go, and don't forget, guys.
Nerve there. part of the autonomy of comedy is the autonomy.
Well, I've spoken to you off air. I can reassure our crew's listeners, Craig went lightly.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks.
So just before we go, just a reminder that you can catch us. What day was it going to be now?
Saturday,
6 p.m. on Facebook,
Friday, and
9 p.m. on YouTube.
Our Ghislaine face mask special.
Yeah.
It might not be as long as this, but you probably appreciate that by Saturday.
Who knows? It depends if we get. We might well end up on Sasquatches being shape-shifting interdimensional aliens again, but you never know. If we can get it from a guide. But I must say before we go, the shout-outs, Christopher over in the States.
Nice.
We've got a number of kind words. So while I might agree that Craig Campbell, the guy on the left, could throw a tent over himself for eyeball appeasement, but I get where he's coming from. This particular comedy show featuring two professional comedians Craig Campbell and Jim Grant, slices into the current human pie of disorientation better than any I've seen.
Wow!
Show.
Wow! Holy! Christopher from the States?
And says, as good a show as you guys have done for sure.
Wow.
That detailed description of the Indian-Chinese conflict at 12,000 feet was unbelievable.
Oh,
Alas, humans are so disorientated most of the time. So sad.
Wow.
You guys are hitting some nail heads tonight. Perfect context.
Thanks.
Really enjoy you two guys banging it up a bit. The whole world should tune in. And he said depleted uranium is the very last truth anybody is aware of, talking about masking. MSM is masking the truth by the same kind of mission of coverage of the ruination of a specific area of the world that keeps on killing for at least hundreds of years, if not longer. And it may even still be going on by our military. We would probably have no way of knowing. Just ask people on the streets. 49 out of 50 have no idea what you're talking about if you mention depleted uranium. 0. So yeah, thanks for those comments, Chris. Clearly, clearly really clued in, and that's we do have clued up listeners on the Cruise podcast from what I've seen, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I suppose anyone that isn't clued in, this sort of stuff's just going to go, shut up, it's conspiracy theory, even though we source absolutely everything that we say. It's just, that's just
shape-shifting Sasquatches. Come on!
There's a difference between us sourcing it and you going, hey, I've got these little theories here, and me just nodding my head going, you know what, I think it could be a Gigantopithecus from, but hey, depleted uranium in Iraq was used, and I think Chris's analysis to say that about 49 out of 50 was that 2%. So 2%, no, yeah, probably. But yeah, thanks so much. It's nice to be appreciated by people who quite clearly have a brain. I really like that. So thank you for listening, Chris, and all the other listeners that we've got. And please like our Facebook page. Please subscribe. And if you're on a social media platform like Facebook, please click that share button. Get it out to more people. Let's see if we can get that 49 out of 50 down to 48, well done, by sharing the show. We're going to
ambition.
Yeah, and from then on in, we'll go. We've got lots of ambition on that show, and I'm pretty sure that by the end of this year, we're going to have some very interesting formats and things to.
Exciting times ahead, Jim.
Yeah, it is exciting times. But it's good. It's good stuff, and
we got more grocery store stories. Don't worry. A couple of card jockeys like us. Woo!
Yeah. And and we're planning to do guests in the future as well. So we've got plans, but as you've probably guessed by now, we've only just figured out how to get the bloody mic to work properly. So give us time. And when I say we, I mean me. Craig knows all this tech. All the tech stuff is down to me. It's my So thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share. It really does help. Don't forget, at 6 p.m. on Facebook on Saturday, our Maxwell and Mask special. Any closing comments for episode 15?
Just and then right on the back of that, we're going to be into episode 16, Jim Grant. So I look forward to speaking to you both for the extra show and for the 16 coming up. And thanks for watching. If you've watched this far on episode 15 of The Cruise.
Thank you very much. Cheers.